hypothetical questions that you're
based on the Chancellor's announcement.
Well, you can ask me anything.
Perhaps you need to talk.
Year.
That is perhaps what you need to talk to the Chancellor
when does
about.
That happen?
Because he has announced this policy at the dispatch box.
I am not going to spend my time trying to terrify pensioners unreasonably.
Tell the Chancellor.
What I am interested.
Absolutely, Neil. Now, are the TOXIC Tories really telling the truth about national insurance? Or more to the point, is it a policy or an aspiration to abolish it? Now, that was what Labour MP Neil Coyle was trying to find out from Minister for Works and Pensions Mel Stride in the Works and Pensions Committee meeting on the 22nd of May 2024.
Is abolishing national insurance an aspiration or a policy?
I describe it as an aspiration. It's not a policy in the sense that we are saying by a certain time this will occur. We are, however, clearly signalling a direction of longer-term travel, the destination being the abolition of national insurance.
Did the Chancellor mislead Parliament?
Not to my knowledge, no.
On the 7th of May, he said it was a policy to abolish employees' national insurance.
So I defined what I meant by policy when I just answered your question, and in those terms, he will have his own definition of what he meant by policy at the moment he said that.
But it's your department.
Hold on, Neil. I've said that you've asked me, is it a policy? And I said, well, in the sense of a policy being a clear commitment at a moment in time to abolish national insurance, then no, it is not. Now, the Chancellor may have his own views as to what a policy is, and we can have a very long conversation about it.
The Chancellor says it's a policy, but the department that is responsible for the spending raised by employees' national insurance.
That's an ingenious line of argument, but it's not reasonable, because what I have done is I have explained, I have defined policy in certain terms and then explained that on that definition, our aspiration to abolish national insurance is not, on that definition, a policy. Now, if you can give me a two-line version of what a policy is and how it's defined that everybody would sign up to and agree, then we'll have an equal playing field on which we answer your questions.
I'll use the government's definition for this, because the gov.uk is very clear what employees' national insurance pays for, including contributions-based ESA. So what is the policy for contributory ESA if NI is abolished?
Yes, well, the word "if" is very important in that question, because nobody is saying that any time soon, nobody is saying that in the short term we are going to be abolishing at a stroke national insurance. And I think most fair-minded people would know, not least because of the cost of doing that, would be several tens of billions of headroom which are not currently there according to the current forecast. That is not the situation we're in. So you're predicating your question on something that is not solid.
Would it mean a £5 to £6 deduction in the state pension per week if 46 billion in revenue is lost?
These are hypothetical questions that you're
based on the Chancellor's announcement.
Well, you can ask me anything. You could say we put the defence budget up by, met a 3% aspiration instead of 2.5%. That would cost X. What would that mean for another part of government spending?
I'm asking these are pure, as the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, if pensions will be affected by the Chancellor's stated policy to abolish national insurance, which raises the revenue to pay pensions.
The Chancellor and I and other members of the government have an aspiration to abolish national insurance through an indeterminate but long period of time. Decisions around how money is spent within government are typically announced, in the main at least, at fiscal events in the spring and the autumn. And as you will know, they are underwritten in a scorecard by the OBR to check that all the numbers add up and are within the fiscal rules. And that's the way it operates. So those decisions that you're theoretically putting forward would be ones that would be taken in that way.
Which takes 46 billion out of government spending primarily to
what period
per year,
does it take the
primarily to your department, and you are not suggesting today that pensioners will be protected from that change. So they can expect to lose £5 or £6 per week per person.
Can you refine your question a bit? When you say this policy will take £46 billion out of public spending, over what period Do you believe the
that is
policy
per
is
year?
saying
And
that?
perhaps you need to
Per
talk.
year?
That is perhaps what you need to talk
So
to
when
the
does-
Chancellor
when does that
about,
happen?
because he has announced this policy at the dispatch box.
He has not announced a period during which this will happen. Any further moves to cut national insurance are a matter for the Chancellor. They will be scored by the Office for Budget Responsibility in the normal way, and they will be funded. Okay. But to make this suggestion that there's suddenly £46 billion that's going to be taken out of the public finances is just not a reasonable assertion to make.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
Thank you. Vaughan Bailey.
I am not going to spend my time trying to terrify pensioners unreasonably. What I am interested.
Yes, absolutely, Neil. Maybe we should see what our grinning Chancellor Jeremy Hunt actually said on the 7th of May.
If she listened to my comments carefully, and I don't always give her credit for that, she would know that our policy is to abolish employees' national insurance, and that means that we want to bring it down to zero. And if Labour's strategy, I'll just say this, if Labour's strategy is to win the election by frightening pensioners with fake news stories, then I would just say that Britain deserves better.
Well, it does sound a hell of a lot more than an aspiration, doesn't it? So either Jeremy Hunt misled Parliament, Mel Stride is talking out of his arse, or the Labour Party are trying to terrify the pensioners. Or maybe all three, who knows? But what do you guys think? Let me know down below and I shall bid you farewell and take care, my friends.